Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we dive into the most pressing stories of our time. I'm your host, Walter, and we're glad you're joining us today. As we explore the complexities of our global landscape, we'll be examining a fascinating and somewhat disturbing trend that's been gaining traction across the world. It appears that far-right ideologies are finding common ground with authoritarian regimes, creating an unlikely alliance between illiberal forces in countries like Russia, China, and the United States. This convergence of interests has led to a sharing of ideas, tactics, and even terminology, with concepts like the white left being imported from China to attack affirmative action and social norms in the U.S. In China, we're seeing a rise in online conservatism, with influencers and bloggers promoting anti-feminist and Islamophobic views, often with the tacit approval or even outright support of the government. The Communist Party has co-opted elements of this online brand of social conservatism, recruiting young men with far-right views into its ranks and using them to promote a more patriarchal and nationalist agenda. Meanwhile, in the U.S., figures like Tucker Carlson and Rodri Hare have been popularizing Chinese concepts to attack liberal values, while policy analysts are exploring the idea of applying Leninist land reforms to address social issues like homelessness. It's a strange and unsettling phenomenon that raises important questions about the future of global politics and the erosion of democratic values. As we delve deeper into this story, it's essential to approach it with nuance and balance, recognizing that these ideologies are complex and multifaceted. We'll be exploring the implications of this trend and what it might mean for human rights, social justice, and international relations. We'll also be examining the role of social media in amplifying these far-right voices and the ways in which governments are responding to or even encouraging these developments. It's a critical time for us to be having these conversations as the world grapples with the challenges of rising nationalism, authoritarianism, and social unrest. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're glad you're still with us as we dive into the world of politics and technology. Today, we're exploring a fascinating story about Elon Musk's involvement with the Trump administration, specifically his role in the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. As we've been following this story, it appears that Musk has been working closely with the administration to identify areas where costs can be cut and waste can be reduced. However, in a recent interview with CBS Sunday Morning, Musk expressed some reservations about the administration's policies, stating that he doesn't entirely agree with everything they're doing. Now, it's worth noting that Musk has been a key figure in the development of DOGE, which has been tasked with streamlining government operations and eliminating unnecessary expenses. But despite his involvement, Musk seems to be walking a fine line between supporting the administration's goals and maintaining his own independence. According to reports, Musk's time at DOGE as a special government employee has come to an end, but he's expected to continue advising the president on various matters. This raises interesting questions about the role of private sector leaders in shaping public policy and the potential conflicts of interest that can arise. On one hand, it's possible to argue that Musk's expertise and experience could be invaluable in helping the government become more efficient and effective. On the other hand, some critics might see his involvement as an example of undue influence or a blurring of the lines between public and private interests. As we consider this story, it's essential to approach it with a nuanced perspective, recognizing both the potential benefits and drawbacks of Musk's involvement with DOGE. By examining the complexities of this situation, we can gain a deeper understanding of the intricate relationships between technology, politics, and governance. Stay tuned for our final story of the day, right here on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We've got one final story to wrap up today's show, and it's a fascinating analysis of Russia's tactics in the ongoing conflict with Ukraine. Now we know this is a complex issue with many different perspectives, so let's dive in and try to break it down. It appears that Russian President Vladimir Putin has been using a clever strategy to shape public opinion and gain diplomatic support from countries around the world. By declaring ceasefires that he has no intention of keeping, Putin is able to present himself as a champion of peace and diplomacy while still pursuing his military objectives in Ukraine. This tactic has been particularly effective in the global south, where many countries are skeptical of Western powers and have historical ties to Russia. By casting himself as a constructive actor who's committed to finding a peaceful solution, Putin is able to gain support from countries that might otherwise be critical of his actions. But what's really interesting here is how this strategy is playing out in the diplomatic arena. The United Nations General Assembly recently passed a resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but a significant number of countries abstained or voted against it. This suggests that Putin's messaging is having an impact, at least to some extent. Now, we want to be clear that this isn't a straightforward issue, and there are many different factors at play. But what's clear is that Russia's tactics are designed to delay a resolution to the conflict, rather than to find a genuine solution. And that's something that Ukraine and its allies need to take into account as they navigate these complex diplomatic waters. As we wrap up today's show, it's worth remembering that the situation in Ukraine is still very much ongoing, and the stakes are high. We'll continue to follow this story and bring you updates as more information becomes available. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay informed.